Thank you so much. And thank you for, again, good morning, one and all. And I want to thank SWAN for making the adjustment on the fly this morning, and for the last panel who went out of order, demonstrating great flexibility and resilience as we are in the water sector. I also want to thank you, Nadia, for the kind introduction, and Shirley and Amir and the whole SWAN team. Many thanks to Smart Water Networks Forum and the team for the invitation to join again this year for the 12th annual conference, in person and live streaming, I was just reminded, from our nation's capital here in Washington, D.C. I must admit that for last year's conference, which was in the virtual format, I had to borrow my friend's pink button-down shirt, which was a little big, because I forgot to pack a suit to take with me to the beach since I was on holiday. So today I feel at least a bit more prepared. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge my colleagues that are here from DC Water or viewing online. I think I just saw our innovation director. I think my senior technical advisor is here somewhere. My colleague, Mrs. Headley, who many of you I'm sure know, and Mr. Ali Reza Parhami, who presented at yesterday's workshop on digital twins. I'm incredibly proud of the collaborative effort he is leading to manifest a digital representation of our critical water infrastructure and the water system operating environment. DC Water continues to be at the forefront of innovation, adapting and leveraging cutting-edge technologies with the intent of maximizing operational efficiency, improving reliability and resiliency, and otherwise operating as a high-performing utility. Ali Reza tells me DC Water is one of a handful of utilities in the United States. Well, actually, he said the only, air quotes, but I didn't have a chance to fact check that. So I'll just say we are one of a handful of utilities in the U.S. which has implemented, though not fully operationalized as yet, a digital twin integrating SCADA, AMR data, computerized maintenance management system data, and our water distribution system hydraulic model. At DC Water, we are making continuous strides in our own smart water journey. And thank you to the DC Water team, wherever you are, that is making it happen. Now, it's very likely that most speeches over the last 2 years have started out with a reference to the times we continue to navigate. A celebration of being able to gather in person again. This is great to see live faces. And the recognition that our course as a water sector has forever changed. The hybrid nature of this conference is a telltale sign. And given the theme of this year's conference, connecting innovation to impact, as well as the cross-section of attendees this year from utilities and academia, we seem to be on a path to ensuring the course of the water sector has changed for the better. As I thought about what I would share today, as there are so many directions a keynote speech could take for a conference like this, though I assure you a tech talk is not one of them, okay? Because I just learned what the cloud was in 2016, and my IT team can tell you they are always rescuing my password, and I'm still taking in what the cloud is. So this won't be a speech about IoT or SAS or even IT. Did I get that right? Okay. Instead, I'm going to start with a story from a TED Talk by a tech inclusionist, he calls himself, Gabenga Sassan, where he talked about a children's relay race that he witnessed in Jamaica. He shared that there were 2 teams of kids spread out as they should be in a relay race. When the race started, the kids were running full out. Each of the teams were doing very well, and then the yellow team started to pull ahead. The yellow team out in front was the first to hand off the baton. And in fact, it looked like they were going to win the relay race until the baton is passed to the littlest guy on the team. He was about maybe 4 or 5 years old. and he started running full speed in the wrong direction. Sesson likened this to the many in his community that are on the wrong side of inequality, the inequality divide, and moving fast in the wrong direction. A divide we have seen grow ever more prominent since late 2019. I saw the relay race as a metaphor for the last 2 years. As a global society, we have shouldered the COVID-19 pandemic, a shock that has become a long-term stress, and specifically for those that can least afford to implement the measures that kept most of us safe. The pandemic underscored all sorts of disparities and inequities, including something as simple but extremely vital as the need to wash our hands. Then in the summer of 2020, against the backdrop of a global pandemic, across the US, we experienced a national reckoning with social injustice and racial inequality. And we can't forget the rise in water-related issues from mega spills in the West, drought, climate impacts to water systems with power shutting down, the loss of water for several weeks, significant cyber attacks, the Western water crisis, the global water crisis, where millions still do not have access to safe, clean drinking water. And of course, increased incidents of flooding, like in the district on September 10th, 2020. A flash flood with 3 inches of rain in less than 2 hours, the equivalent of a 25-year storm, impacted over 240 homes that are in communities which are most physically and economically vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And that wasn't the first time. Based on post-event canvassing, data from the district's Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, HSEMA, noted that 105 residents reported major damage caused by the consequences of the flood, including standing water, standing sewage, residual sediment, damaged flooring, wet drywall, damaged utilities, and mold growth, among other issues. Statistics from the Federal Emergency Management Administration show that just 1 inch of water inside of a structure can cause at least $25,000 in damage, a significant issue for those that don't have insurance and don't have a couple $1,000s laying around to address the issue. The world and the water sector have indeed arrived at an inflection point. This is the point between extreme disruption and recovery. This is a time of significant change in which we must run in the right direction. If you believe, as our Assistant Administrator of the Office of Water for the United States Environmental Protection Agency has stated on many occasions, that investing in water can become a force for addressing the most pressing issues of our time, the global pandemic, economic recovery, racial equity, and the climate crisis, then you understand why it is important, as our theme suggests, to connect innovation to impact. Last year, DC Water released an updated strategic plan with 5 imperatives, including sustainability and equity. As we continue a multi-pronged approach towards the implementation of digital solutions, we are ourselves weighing the value creation and thinking about the strategic drivers as well as the outcomes, not so much for ourselves, but for the communities we serve. As SWAN's new Smart Water Framework suggests, we are thinking not only of the what and the how, but the why and the who, so that our underserved and vulnerable communities are prioritized to benefit from these investments. To address the repeated flooding of vulnerable communities, our team developed an early flood warning and predictive rainfall forecast tool and an event management system dashboard, which just won a global award last week at the Global Awards Summit. I have to put a plug in for that. We've expanded real-time sensor monitoring for our water distribution system to reduce the impacts of water outages across the system, particularly in those communities that have been most impacted by water service disruption, just to name a few. But as Gabenga said in his TED Talk, technology alone will not fix inequality, which is why the future of smart water is less about the output of IoT and AI and more about targeting the right outcomes to drive the triple bottom line. It has already been proven that smart water innovations can serve as a catalyst for economic, social, and environmental outcomes. Now we have to see how far and how fast we can run in the right direction and what we as a water sector can control, impact, and influence. It is incumbent upon us to not only innovate, but to do so in a way that closes the divide, that ensures all communities are better for the investments we make. In the words of our poet laureate, Amanda Gorman, in this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. What are we going to do in this time? Thank you for the opportunity to open this year's conference. I look forward to the value and impact we can create together. Thank you.